Demon Reach is powered by the power within it, and it's got all those demons or whatever in it.
Right. Be off topic to start the show.
Oh, gravity.
Seriously,
hello.
dude.
Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast. This is the Dresden Files podcast, brought to you by the Broken Jars Network. I'm not the director. The director's right next to me. Right
Is it still? We haven't been endorsed by Tide or anything yet?
We haven't eaten enough Tide Pods for that, so
Oh, that's why.
Okay,
we're
you
not
first.
the target audience.
Well, we got one person on socialized medicine, so he should be the first one.
It's great, by the way. I can just go to the hospital whenever I want. I don't have to worry about pain.
I tell you, Sweden is just the best.
Okay, I'm leaving again.
Don't make fun of.
Productive today. Death masks, unless there's any news person.
Honestly,
That's
I don't
Justin.
recall anything this time. Yeah.
Nope.
But we seriously should have timed it better so that we could do blood rights this weekend because the turkey.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. If only we hadn't spent
You messed it up.
so much time on alignments.
Ooh.
It's more
I
like
would just kind of like bringing up things we thought were interesting, like we usually do, and it's not doesn't have to be that specific in order. Because can segue on the turkey.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that was okay. That's before I said anything more. The entropy curse from the next book, I think it is hinted at in this book, or like that's like the favorite killing thing of like easy ways to get rid of people. Like Cassius since after.
And I mean, it's certainly something that anyone could do with power, and there's two different people who have power.
I mean, I'll allow it. I feel it's a tenuous connection, but you're right. Entropy curse was used before the entropy curse became a plot device. So
Yeah, it was just him. Like it's just like kind of set up, you know. And he's like, this is something people like to use. It's because it's like effective. And then the next book, I think it is. It's like one of the main plot lines.
Yep.
So I think that was on purpose for sure.
All
Right?
the way back to the first one, you have direct magic. It wasn't an entropy curse, right, in Stormfront, but it's definitely a direct curse from the wizard to another wizard, powered by some thing in regularity. I don't know. Butcher does that.
Yeah, there was like loads of little things I noticed, like going through with that whole retrospective kind of mindset. Also, I think specific things he did in Skin Games to kind of make callbacks to this book.
Yeah, like Valmont.
Yeah, but like also
people.
like for example that what was it I thought about when I was reading the book or listening to it. Well, like this is the only book I think where there's like we're dressing like no wait, and he also like this is the only book where like there's like a hotel thing, but I think that's also happened like except for Skin Games.
That
Yeah,
also
but I
happens
thought-
with Valmont.
But yeah, we're 1 month. But like then I thought about SplatterCon is actually
Yeah,
a thing.
SplatterCons, because conventions are lots of times held at hotels and stuff.
Sure, and
Yeah,
the White
right.
Council meeting was held at wasn't that at a hotel or a hotel conference room?
No,
thought-
Summer Night.
It was a convention center.
Yeah, in summer.
They were
Yeah.
both like kind of at galas, Skin Games, and then here.
Mhm.
I don't know if that was on purpose. It's just like it's gonna be the same thing, kinda, because it happened in this book with her. So we're gonna do it again.
I feel like it's semi on purpose and semi the fact that it's like a spy, movie trope, right? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, you gotta have a Minitux or something.
right. Well, not just that, but I mean, to me, like maybe it's the kind of nerd that I am, but the Skin Game scene is very True Lies, where it's just like they're both, undercover, but they're talking about what's going on, and then the actual professional shows up, and it's like, oh yeah, we should do the thing, and whatever. So
I love the doggy in the back. I've forgotten about that. That's what
the what?
the duck in the back as a pistol. Like he uses that as a pretend pistol.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd like to dive straight into one of my stupid conspiracy theories.
Oh no,
There's
not
a-
Rashid again,
Yes.
is it?
No.
Okay,
He didn't
thank
show up
God.
in his book.
Denarians surrounding Maggie. Like, the
Oh.
entropy curse leads to Maggie's conception.
Uh-huh.
And that would have been very interesting if changes had been Denarians instead of Winter Night.
Okay, so what? I mean, you're gonna have to pretend I'm a guy. You can't just hint about these things. You're just gonna have to tell me. So
If Dresden had to go to the Denarians in order to save Maggie,
right.
and they would have caused her creation, albeit indirectly,
Okay.
and been the way that he had to save his daughter.
Okay.
It's just weird.
Oh, okay. You got me.
I was gonna say
And
that.
also, it would have been funny for Susan and Deidre to meet again after Susan beat Deidre's ass.
I mean, that part would be awkward, but something tells me that Susan still would have died somehow along the way.
But it still would have been funny.
Because I mean, what like, it's so he goes to the Denarians, right? While holding two of the swords. Like, how does that fucking work?
Yeah, that would have
You
been
know?
interesting too. It was like, would the swords have still worked because the child still needed saving, or would they have worked against him?
Right.
That's why I keep saying that no matter what his protestations are, I'm pretty sure he always knew it was going to be the Winter Knight.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I like to trust Jim and his ability, because there are a lot of things where I'm like, man, I don't know how that work, and then I feel like he makes it work. But this is one of those where it's like, you can squint and look sideways and you can do all you want, but there are huge roadblocks between Dresden and everything else. It's like, on one, he becomes a mass murderer, possibly genocidal maniac. On the other, he becomes, okay, sure, he's James Bond and that's a cool image, but really still people are going to die and he's still playing for the bad team. Mab is bad, don't get me wrong, but she doesn't like go out of her way to just hurt random mortals.
She's not
right?
like mass murderer or apocalypse. But I mean, I guess
more specifically, she can't hurt people that haven't bartered with her. So they already stepped in it by the time Mab's fucking with them. Whereas Denarians are like, hey, guess what's funny? A plague. You know, so. Ha! You know, the Black Plague, hilarious. Whew. Yeah, anyway.
Was funny one.
Well, I would say that these might have been obstacles in one sense, but they're also storytelling opportunities. If you have something that looks so weird, so different, you don't think it's going to be possible. It's going to be impossible to ride around it. There's such huge obstacles making that happen. It's an opportunity to have something interesting or clever or different too. I mean, I think there would be possible that the swords wouldn't be a huge issue for me, because the cause of the swords is to save the Denarians from the fallen angels, right? That is the bearers of the Denarians. So if I think Jim could have worked something out with the swords
I
specifically.
think the Denarians could. I don't think that that's what's that right called? The
curse?
No, the right. The I ascend to godhood.
The Dark Isle?
Dark Hollow
Yeah,
was the word. Yeah.
Dark Hollow.
I don't think he would ever do that. Ever. I could see him accepting Lashiel and kind of like working as partners. Like, I could have seen that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Not joining the Denarians, but kind of like doing their own thing.
Maybe. Okay. I mean, I think we're going to see one of them in Mirror Mirror, because I feel like he's going to have to power up somewhere. So,
well, in Mirror Mirror, you got to wonder, does Maggie exist?
right. Does Maggie exist? Did he still get a coin in the first place? Because if he's playing for the Red Court, would he have still been helping Michael? Like, would he have gone on Larry Fowler and all that nonsense, right? So, like, we're already so far down the other timeline at this point that I can't even guess what he would be doing at this point, right? Because if there's a Red War, it's because, like Ebenezer started it or something like that, right? Like, they took Dresden and he's like, fuck if that's going to happen, and started the war anyway. Like, maybe Satellite Dresden still happens, which is one of my favorite parts in the series, by the way. Like, this is the best ending out of any of the books, in my opinion. I mean, Changes is still its own microcosm, but does Ebenezer still squish Casaverde for a little bit of irony, because it's like, you took my grandson from me, so I'm going to crush the fuck out of your little village and kick off the war anyway. Like, but as far as like what Dresden's doing, like, we're so far removed from where he would be, like how he would be involved. Does Marcone just wind up with the shroud? Or does Nicodemus wind up with the shroud and the the plague kicks off. Like, are we looking at a wasteland in the Midwest already?
I think Marcone is a lot more important than Dresden realizes.
Sure.
Like Dresden gets kind of the inkling when Marcone becomes a signatory of the Accords. Like, yes, okay, he's clearly getting powerful, but I think Dresden likes to ignore him for several books when it seems like the first 2 books are directed at undercutting Marcone's ability. This one also seems to be both caused by Marcone and trying to steal away from him. And you see that he's getting guard at this point and working with Monarch.
And super effective, by the way. Like, Dresden had to be both a wizard and a detective to follow him at the end of the book. If he had been either one of them, he would have lost him. Yeah.
Marcone is incredibly capable and promoting his own brand of stability in an area.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems that everything is trying to focus on him not being stable. Because, so Nicodemus, I don't know if he's targeting Marcone in any way, but Marcone wanted the Shroud. The Shroud is going to cause the plagues, and that would have completely destabilized Chicago and the Midwest.
It probably was. I'm a mark it as a coincidence without like additional information. Like maybe they saw
really exist in this verse.
Coincidentally, I was going to say that, but no. What I was going to say is like it could be that Nicodemus was already after the Shroud and it just was in motion at the same time. It could be that Nicodemus saw an opportunity that once the church mice got the Shroud out, he's like, well, I can get it from those punks. No problem. Right. And that's how they became involved. But I don't necessarily think that Nicodemus was targeting Marcone. I think him trying to convert him at the end was just like, shit, we're both evil dudes. Like, sign up, bro, type of thing. And it's like, well, now I'm going to have to kill you.
I think Nicodemus's motivation
seem a bit
weird. The more that I examine this book and all the things that he does, it's like, so they have Snake Boy, what's his face, become Father Vincent.
Right. Cassius. Yeah.
Cassius. Okay. And then he's deliberately getting Dresden involved.
Right.
It seems like Cassius only thinks just to find the Shroud when Nicodemus wants to offer him a coin.
Right.
So obviously Nick isn't sharing all of the information with his people as expected.
Right.
But what he's actually trying to accomplish seems very bizarre.
What's weird about that to me, like when I read it in your notes, is the fact that so Cassius brought him in to find the Shroud, but they deliberately went out of their way to waylay an angelic messenger so that they could keep Dresden out of being involved by telling the knights to keep him out.
Right.
That's the part that I don't understand.
So,
right?
I mean, like you want...
Yeah, right? Because it's not easy to do this thing, so we might as well have Cassius fuck up the entire plan with 50 cents in a payphone by calling Dresden and signing him up. Like, I don't know. So
what's the actual purpose of waylaying the messenger and making the knights think that Harry is going to die and that's it?
I thought they wanted to keep him out. Or maybe
the knights wanted to keep him out because they don't want Harry to die. But then the rest of it was that, like, if you don't get involved, then the entire city dies. So I guess he didn't want the knights to have that forewarning that something bigger was happening.
Or so one of the things I was going to bring up pre-show, which kind of works here now, is that we've talked about and speculated before that Anduriel might be like one of the best information gatherers on the planet, right? So Nicodemus probably knows a bunch of shit that he has otherwise no reason to know. And so maybe it's something like, he knows that Michael and Harry are buddy-buddy, and he knows that Michael's going to be distracted if Harry's involved, and shit like that. I don't really know, because like when you take 2 steps back and look at the whole fucking story, like from beginning to end, like while I'm in it, I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense. Let's just keep going. But now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, yeah, no, that I have no idea.
If Anduriel is so good at finding out all that stuff, then why not just track down the church mice directly?
They did, though. The church mice got away.
Well, so like, okay, they got away from Italy, and Gaston Laroche was left there, and he died.
Right.
But how did they find him on the boat? Like, Dresden found out from Ulsharavas, and he went there. But
why didn't Father Vincent afterward and said that he had a lead, so they probably...
True. Also, it was dark,
so they just listened in on it?
But it seems like Anduriel would have been able to find them independently. unless that was just entirely retconned.
Right.
Well, I don't, and I admittedly, I'm only going based off of memory from what they said in Skin Game and his talk with Kringle, but I don't like the way they made it seem like is Andariel can listen from any shadow so long as he knows to focus on it. But I don't know that necessarily means that he knows where anyone is at any given time, anywhere in the world, at all times.
Well, yeah. That makes sense.
But he would know the identity of the people, like because Cassius as Vincent told Harry that it's Francisca Garcia and Anna Valmont, so you know the identity of them. You know they're in Chicago. It feels like Andariel should be able to figure it beyond that.
Well, then it's also possible that this idea wasn't really fleshed out then.
Yeah, which is why maybe retcon 10 books later.
Maybe, but the other thing that I have a tough time with in the Dresden Files, like overall, is the fact that Harry takes on shit that is way the fuck out of his league all the time, and the Donarians are way the fuck out of his league. Definitely in Death Mask, because it's like, okay, so multiple of these dudes that came with Nicodemus have been with their hosts for hundreds of years. Nicodemus has been with Andariel for thousands of years. You know, like, come on. If Nicodemus had slept for 1,800 of those 2,000 years, he's still got way fucking more skill and knowledge and everything than Dresden does. So, you know, like you get a little taste of that, and the fact that it seems like Nicodemus mostly read the Evil Overlord list, but there's still some things where it's like, you know, Harry's able to put together his weakness in like 30 seconds, and that won't pay off for another 5 books, but it's just...
And it's like nobody else has ever put that together?
Right. Right.
What?
It just, there's just a lot of because that's the way it was written. You know, it is what it is. Don't think about it too much. Don't ask too many questions.
I also think this is one of the more kind of like the third book, like messier books.
Yes.
Like,
well, that's why the director hates it.
Well, it's just like every time that I go through it, I feel like it's focusing, okay, so it's like Denarians, and then random vampires. Or it's like it's focusing on the vampires and then like sidelined by the Denarians again. And for some reason, those transitions are jarring when they shouldn't be. Like, and it's specifically focusing on that this time. It's like he has both plot lines interweaving as much as he possibly can. He has Shiro talking to the vampires, and he has Susan fighting Denarians directly. It's just like, but somehow it's still weirdly jarring.
Well, because what's funny is like he gets done getting his ass kicked, right? And then everyone's like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" He's like, "I gotta go fight the duel." They're like, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Yeah,
the duel was like so on.
The same thing happened in Blood Rights. It's like, so when he was figuring out like the 3 witches and everything, and then immediately I have got to go to the homeless shelter and fight Mavra. It's like, what are you talking about?
Right.
The police are after you. It's the same kind of jarring motion.
Right.
In my head, and I didn't like it, and I still don't like it.
Well, except in Blood Rights, though, they explain why the police weren't after him. So
yes, they did. And
there is good in character, in world, you know.
Yeah, and I feel like it shouldn't be as jarring for Death Mask as it is to me, but somehow it is. It's like there's so much crossover between the plot lines, and yet I still mix them up.
Yeah, it still feels like the 2 books, 2 completely separate stories. I think a lot of that has a lot to do with Jim trying to realize his ambition of this long 20-book epic with a 3-part ending and yada, yada, yada. And this is the book really is just a book about the Shroud, but with 5 or 6 chapters intermixed throughout, with maybe a little bit of crossover. That's this week on the Dresden Files, you know. They had to keep the continuation of the wartime plot.
Yeah, right. They had to keep the war relevant. So,
and they also they spend a whole chapter with him trying to do the duel, and half that chapter is him just talking to Molly. Molly is being set up as a character. So a lot of this, of the weirdness of this book is him trying to do the large arc storytelling while still having a standalone book.
There's definitely, I noticed that too. There's definitely a lot of foreshadowing and like building up characters, like introducing. Well, the Shiro, but it's only this one book with Sanya. Sure. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of like
bringing
universe
back setting them up as being better. Guard, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of new things that are being introduced in this book, and that's
Mark
great. Like the fellowship and all sorts of that. It's just somehow, and I can't pinpoint exactly what, but the transitions between things were too rough. But when I'm going down, like, what was a checklist of how I would do this, he's doing it right, but somehow it's just
didn't
too
work.
separate. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've not figured out why.
Yeah, and I don't know what to tell you, because Grave Peril has been like that for me for sure, but I don't have as much of a problem with Death Masks until we started talking about some of the continuity shit, or the like, why Cassius is dumb. Like the other part,
Oh my
the
God,
other part that annoys me is like, so now Cassius is intertwined because he's going to come back in Deadbeat, but it's like, but why? Like, and don't get me wrong, that's also one of my favorite scenes is, Dresden beating the fuck out of him, because nobody gets justice like Dresden does with that baseball bat. But
God, that's so good.
And getting the Paladins to laugh about it afterwards is fantastic, because it's like, all right, that's going on your guys' permanent record because you guys laughed at it. But it's an amazing part. Right. So there's so many good things in this book, but I feel like you got to be along for the ride. Like, if you try to put too much, extra world logic into it or whatnot, then it does seem a little flimsy now that we're talking about it. So
nothing is flimsier than finding out that Fort Hill has a tattoo.
Why? What's wrong with that?
Because it seems like such a weird character break for Father Fort Hill.
He wasn't always a monk.
Okay, there's that thing. Why does he have a pagan symbol?
Because they were.
Why does he have an Egyptian symbol at this point? Because Egyptian keeps coming up.
Right.
And then it's just like he finds out because he was working on the edition. It's just like, okay. And that connects to the dead body. And it's like, I get it. But that has never come up again. Right?
Which part?
The fact that Fort Hill and a bunch of friends decided to go get tattoos because they found a vampire.
Oh, yeah, because it was only relevant to this plot.
Which it's just like that kind of adds to the flimsiness of the tattoo.
He literally says, it happened one time 20 years ago and nobody else talks about it. And they just get really drunk.
I think she's talking about why that tattoo, why the Eye of Thoth, right?
Well, why that tattoo? Why is this the connection that he is using between things to figure out that? I just think Jim could have done better with that particular point. He needed the leap in logic between figuring out that Father Vincent is not actually Father Vincent. And so he used Fort Hill in a tattoo. But I think he could have done that better.
There just could have been a better tattoo. There could have been a better tattoo.
I mean, if it was,
it's going to come back later.
If it does come back later, that would be better.
What if Fort Hill is Black Council?
Oh,
because they're Egyptians. Just saying. Ha! That's right.
What if Fort Hill's the one betraying them? Except we already know canonically the Psychopomp came to rescue him when he was dying.
No, the ghost story kind of is like he's too much of a good guy. Psychopomp wouldn't do that.
Canonically, he's a good guy. The White God likes him. So
someone's gonna have to.
I mean, honestly, the thing I found the most like I like the idea of it. Just like he's randomly finds out. It's not that bad. I don't hate it. What I found flimsy about it was just like, we're a bunch of guys. It just so happens to be only me and Vittorio who has the tattoo still. That was probably the most flimsy part.
Vincent. Vittorio's the other guy.
Yeah, Vittorio's
Vincent.
White Knight.
He's equally worthless in his own respect.
It's just,
I have a theory.
I feel like he could have done something more of like talking about Vincent when he was younger, or something that betrayed something about the character.
Mm-hmm.
Not.
I'll tell you something that I know about Vincent. It's very important. He dead. He's not alive anymore. He is a body. So.
But seriously, Cassius is really dumb.
Yeah, he's like the worst of the Denari.
Why do you think he's not getting a coin back? Nicodemus finally got rid of this fucking guy. What's with him and the snakes? Fuck yeah. Thanks, Preston. See ya.
You got a guy with snakes. Why? Because we're evil and snakes are scary, okay? So, I mean, honestly, though, that like you get your throwaway line, like, I've never seen a snake spell like that. And like, okay, Voldemort could have done it, whatever, so.
I do have a theory.
Okay, do it.
Why it feels so weird? Why it feels like two books instead of one. So here's my theory. The book that did this type of thing right, where it says your weekly update on the Red Court War and this week on the Dresden Files, the Monster of the Week thing, where it has two plots. The book that did it right was Summer Night, because the premise of the book, the overarching thing, is that there's something with the vampires, and Harry has to help the White Council get permission to go across Fairyland, and that's the war part.
Yeah,
but the whole
would
plot of
agree
the
with you.
book is solving this mystery, and that's the task he's doing, the favor he's doing to get that back. So,
Yeah.
so the whole dilemma of there's this overarching plot, and how do you do a standalone book while trying to serve that overarching plot? The problem here in this book is it's just coincidence. Larry Fowler is not Mab. Mab could play things together, but Larry Fowler is not the guy who just coincidentally happens to.
No,
have
but
the two
they
things that start the
both
plot.
went on the show specifically to talk to Dresden.
4
Well-
people, guys. 4 people. Okay. Dresden is there to talk to Morty. Ortega just happens to show up, and so does Father Vincent. Are you fucking
it's
kidding me?
weird.
That's such
No,
a
at
coincidence.
At least Ortega inserted himself there. He found out that the area was going to be there and inserted himself.
Sure.
And
And
I
mean,
wish that there would be some kind of thing where there's some cause for them to be there. The Larry Fowler thing could just be a joke, but why why do these two plots happen to coincide right now? That's the biggest thing.
because they
So-
have to. I mean, it's the next
Yeah.
book.
That's basically
I mean, because
Basically it.
another good example is Proven Guilty, right? Proven Guilty.
Yeah,
they
Proven
have
Guilty
that,
was really good about
that whole instance with them bestowing the gifts to Morgan and Harry, and it's one of those. Hey, guess what? While you were busy kicking Fetch's asses in winter, like Morgan was over there killing nobles and shit. Fighting the war. So
Right,
it just,
right.
yeah,
which
because
is
it's
another of my favorite books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proven Guilty did it really well in the fact that Molly being tied up with Michael was off saving the trainees. Yeah. That
We're
one
gonna get
intertwined
tied
everything
up.
very well. That
I
one's gonna be
I
fun.
just love the whole thing with Dresden taking a leap of faith, but on Michael's behalf, it's like God is not going to let Michael down. I don't believe it.
right.
Yeah, I didn't take a leap of faith. I took yours, right?
Yeah.
So the problem with this one is specifically that there's no reason for these two things to happen at the same time. Larry Fowler is not that influential of a guy. That South
he's
America.
fucking Jerry Springer. Of the
It's to say
Yeah,
Jerry
basically.
Springer, right?
Jerry Springer is not that influential.
Jerry.
Even Larry, even then, even in the 90s, Larry Springer was not that influential.
right.
So
No, but I definitely think he's trying to introduce a lot of the things that are going to happen. That's why I think some of the books later are so good. All these things have been introduced, and the story flows better. But it's
The only
definitely-
reason for Larry Fowler is so that we could have the ongoing butt of the fact that he's getting sued every other book.
Yeah. Until
Right.
that
Right.
just disappears and you don't hear about it again.
Well,
Well,
he
he
did
did
kind of die. So yeah, right. Even the courts let you off the hook at that point.
Well, they try.
And it's not like he had any family on record. Maggie isn't on paper. Maggie is not his.
I think someone has taken care
Daughter.
of that, right? She's on paper
What?
now.
Yeah, now maybe,
Yeah.
but he's also back to the land of the living on paper. So
Yeah, he
Probably.
got jury summons. My God.
Oh yeah, that's true.
right.
I mean, that was set up though.
Yeah. even
Rashid
so.
knew what he was doing. That's why he did it. And he was like, "Yeah, you should be on jury duty."
Right. Hold on, because now you're gonna break my brain for a little microcosm. So Rashid didn't just make him back to life for the White Council. Rashid also knows the government spooks to make him back alive officially.
The White Council probably has that
The White
paperwork
Council
all
has
tied
it.
up
Oh, yeah,
just so that people
he
have access to
specifically
their
said,
bank
I think
accounts again.
Yeah, I think I remember the forms for the government. It was all
I thought it was
quote unquote
just
official paperwork.
I'm pretty
Yeah, I
sure
thought it was
the
just
White
White
Council
Council,
must
but-
almost have a department because they live hundreds of years for people to take care of official paperwork.
I'll buy that.
How did
Well,
you get
sure,
this
I mean-
form from Revision 3 from 1876?
We're very
Well,
good at
Dresden
our
makes the comment one time that they have a whole bunch of quote unquote financial warriors that handle that. So there's no
That's true,
doubt they
that's
have governmental paper
Can
bureaucracy.
you imagine being a wizard and then just being an accountant?
You imagine being
a
Peabody?
Riftomancer, I guess.
Well, guess what? Their wizards aren't what I mean. Like wizards, something they can do. It's not what they are, right? Because even Engine Joe goes to fucking school to get his PhDs in medicine.
Yeah,
He
what,
can
like
literally bend life energy and heal somebody, but he still goes to fucking school to get his PhDs every couple of years.
I think it's every
They fucking
30 years
read.
or what is it? 20 years he goes
Yeah,
again.
whatever. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the point is that they study. How about this? Could you imagine being a fucking wizard and being fucking Peabody?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same
No wonder
type
he's-
of thing.
No wonder he's evil. He's a fucking records keeper with a name Peabody. Like, I'd go nuts too. So, hundreds of years, Peabody. Come on, dude's definitely
How connected is a Black Council / outsiders throughout the Red Court?
I would say not very, honestly.
Because Cal and Komori were there at Bianca's party. Ortega was there at Bianca's party.
Yep.
And it seems
We never
like
see
Black
a
Council is
small
really
point of order. We
involved in
don't
the
see
war.
him. We don't see him at the party.
Oh,
Yeah.
But he wasn't at the party. He was there
He's
after.
after the party. He's there to like
Okay.
witness.
Yeah.
Yes, he's an observer. So he might not have been on the floor, but he was probably there watching everything go down.
Yeah. Watching.
Yeah.
But and then the outsiders seem to have a lot of involvement with the war because they show up several points, like in Proven Guilty at least once, and various other times, so like the Sicily and stuff.
Yep.
And all
So-
that kind of culminates in people trying to destroy the White Council and changes via Dresden, Ebenezer, and all that.
Well, just cut him really deep again. You know?
Yeah. And Ariana just wants a promotion, but her husband, and the way she called it grandchild, was really involved with Count Komori. But how much does Ortega know?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I get the feeling that the Red Court isn't in on it. Like, not largely. I think they're benefiting from it. I feel like they're getting pushed, but I don't feel like it's not. I don't think that I can't pronounce the dude's name, but I don't think the Red King is orchestrating something.
Kulkan.
Thank you. I don't think the Lords of Outer Night are even necessarily in on it, though. It does leave room to speculate that they could be outsiders of some kind themselves. But at the end of the day, like, I don't think Ortega knows. Like, that's part of why the duel in the first place, right? If Ortega thought that they had the Black Council support and they were going to crush the White Council for sure, he'd just fucking blunder ahead with it. But instead, he's doing the politician thing, and he's like, I want to save my people.
But yes, but as Shiro pointed out, it's like they were already preparing for the war.
Right.
They were
Right, but
already
he thought
being
it was
pushed.
premature even then.
Right.
Yes, and they thought it was premature, and they weren't ready for it. And the Black Council is going to blah 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 blah. But
Right.
the Red Court is being pushed to start a war,
Yep.
Yes.
and they did.
Yep. I feel like the Black Council might be on the side sending advisors and being like, hey, guess what? If we do this, that, and the other thing, we'll get you into Archangel. You can bring it down and you can take these fuckers out. Like, I think they might know something along that side, but they don't necessarily know, like, oh, hey, guess what? Outsiders are doing it, and Nemesis and like, I feel like maybe they from their perspective, they've got some rogue wizards helping them. Like, it could be
Because
something like that.
Simon is Cal,
Yeah.
and then he manipulated the Red Court from the inside.
Well,
it works.
Everybody, but
It
yes.
works one of two ways. Either, and you can start from the top down since everything happens because of the Red King's say so, essentially. So one is
He's a
either he
figurehead.
actually is a crazy blood junkie, which makes the Red Court easy to infiltrate in other respects and be
Right.
used as a pawn by the Black Council and the outsiders and this, that, and the other thing. Or he is either A, taken by Nemesis, or B, just complicit in knowing what the Black Council is up to and is actively working with them to some degree. And then either way, the Red Court, whichever way you slice it, is pretty much just a pawn of the Black Council and the outsiders and all that, because they have the Fomor ready to step in, which is their quote-unquote real objective. So I think either way, the Red Courts are useful weapons, in which case they could have just done all the work themselves and then been disposed of at any given moment, or they were an active obstacle and they needed to be gotten rid of.
So, sorry, what you said kind of broke my mind in another place. So the Fomor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they coming back because the White Council is weakened, or were they waiting in the wings because there wasn't
Power
space
vacuum.
in the Accords? I
There
know,
was no
right?
power vacuum, yeah.
Because they say at the end of changes that the power vacuum left over by the Red Court was immediately being filled, and that was the Fomor. They were right there, ready to go.
But they would have done it, like, if the White Council had gotten wiped out, they would have done the same thing there. But that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, no,
Like-
it's not. It's not necessarily that one of them had to go to make room for the Fomor. It's that if the Fomor are being used by the same people that were using the Red Court, then the Red Court works in two ways for them. Either they win and get rid of the big obstacle on the White Council and do whatever else they were going to do, and then can be discarded at any moment going forward, or
Gotcha.
they were an active obstacle in some way, perhaps to Nemesis, to the Fomor and all this and the other thing, and were being set up all along to be taken out.
Right.
But either
And
way,
that's part of
they
why they
had their
went too
use.
early. Yeah. They weakened the White Council, but really were getting out of the way for other reasons. Probably just because, we've discussed before, they're one of the two superpowers, quote, for lack of a better word, in the supernatural world.
You have to consider that the Red Court basically pissed everyone off. They pissed off the fairies. They pissed off the council. Nicodemus says in small favor that they're dangerous to his plans, and he would just as happily hat up with Dresden to get rid of them.
But Nicodemus seems to be trying to build up in order to fight the outsiders.
Sure. But yes, and it makes sense because the Red Court, if they're dangerous to his plans, they're summoning outsiders. They're clearly...
Yeah. So, he's already against them.
So that puts them on mad shit side, too, because of that. And plus, they invaded the fairy territory. So the Red Court, whether they're pawns or active collaborators, either way, they were gonna go. Because they had just built up too many enemies that even if they managed to take out the council, everyone else was going to come after them anyway.
Sure. Well, in the process of, you mean, right? Because most of the people they piss off, like Mab, for instance, they pissed off because they're just running over our borders and shit. So
right, because they did they upset the status quo, which is the big no-no.
And I'm sure summoning outsiders into Fairy probably didn't go unnoticed either. So
yeah. Well, summoning them at all.
Sure.
Location is adding insult to injury, almost certainly. You follow them into the Never Never with outsiders, you're going to just put salt in the wound, but you're summoning outsiders in the first place. You're not going to have a good time from one particular court.
I agree with you. Okay, sorry. Death masks. What else we got going on?
Harry and Susan.
No, screw them. Talk about the archive. Harry and Susan can be talked about for any book up until she finally gets what she
we talk about Harry.
Isn't this pretty much the last one until changes?
This is where Maggie's conceived, and then he pretty much gets over her. He's
mostly
he puts away the ring and stuff.
Right. It's also kind of hard for her to show up pregnant and still keep that bomb from him, and also hey, Harry, it's nice to see you. Oh, don't mind me making phone calls to check on the kid. So yeah, we don't see her again until changes.
So this is our last chance to annoy you with talking about Susan until changes, which will be the last time ever we get to talk about Susan. So let's talk about Susan.
My luck doesn't work that way. She's going to come up as some flash
ghost. Susan's past.
Yeah, mirror.
We all know Susan is coming back.
And then she'll show up in the big apocalyptic trilogy somehow, some way, because why not?
Because he's going to bring her back from the other side.
It's like Revelations. Exactly. The dead are going to rise. Everyone's going to come back to life.
So if he did do the Dark Hollow and changes, then, as Jim said, all his friends would be dead, so he can just pick them back
presumably
up.
He would. No, because he would presumably wouldn't suck them up. He would just go and do it on do it like on Demon Reach, not suck up the people though, but suck up the animals and the life.
Okay, if you did a Dark Hollow on Demon Reach, and you can get all those beings sucked up.
Right, but then he didn't know they were there. Is my point.
Yeah.
No, but you would be first of all, I think you would be you wouldn't be the same person anymore.
It'd be you and the White God.
You absolutely wouldn't. If he was able to pull off that kind of thing with all the things down there, he would essentially be, like a dark archangel on top of his own self.
At least, yeah.
So, but I don't think you could passively absorb them if you don't know they're down there. Those are the kinds of things, plus Demon Reach's containment. You would have to be the warden, actively know how to let them go, and then actively want to be sucking them up in order to pull that off. I don't think you could just passively go there and do it.
That was quadruple entendre, so we're going to need to change the subject. But no. Okay, so we could talk about the fact that probably half of our listeners know anyway that Susan and Harry's thing is practically a bet again, because that's how Jim likes to write his stories. So, he was having it out with some author who said that you can't make a love scene plot relevant, and he said, "Oh, really?"
No.
And then
it was a BDSM scene specifically.
Right. I was going to say, it's like went for the bonus points, right? So yeah.
See, and now you know why it's so jarring, because he had to shoehorn in the red court with Susan coming back because he had to win this bet. There you go. Mystery solved.
Anyway, I think the Ivy thing's the more interesting thing to talk about, but, do you guys want to antagonize EG some more with Susan?
I mean, I just think that they handled the relationship in a very adult fashion.
Well, very adult, consenting adults.
Yeah. And they tried to undercut it at first with Molly being, oh, why don't you just tie her up?
Right. Yeah. I was like, how about the fact that Molly gives him the fucking idea practically?
That she has handcuff keys and this, that, and the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. She's a Catholic schoolgirl, so.
Yeah.
Point.
Of a literal Knight of the Cross paladin, I mean, she's going way. There's a reason she had handcuff keys and mental magic.
She's basically preacher's kid.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny because the person she's rebelling against is not her dad. She's nothing but love for her dad. I think it's her mom.
Oh yeah, easily. Because Charity is overbearing to the nth degree. I mean, great. She's a loving mother and this, that, and the other thing, but she's an overbearing, judgmental.
Not a shit Dresden had to go to be accepted. It's like,
and even then, it's only because he has a kid, basically.
No.
She's accepted before that. She's like family stays.
Yeah.
Right. So, you really think that proven guilty didn't get him anything, in her good graces, that it had to wait till after changes?
It almost got squandered right there in the end when she's arguing with him again. You just want to save your own skin. I mean, he goes through all that with her, and she's still immediately ready to knee-jerk reaction against him.
I'm not saying she's not a bitch, but
that's my only point. She's an overbearing, judgmental.
She's trying to do her right stuff, take care of Michael. Because we find out, right? She makes his armor, so she is the reason he comes home as often as not. Probably, like she spars
unless
with
Dresden
him.
Gets involved, in which everything she does to protect her family fails.
You know what? Then be angry at God. He's supposed to protect him.
Which she is in proven guilty.
Right, but my point is, she gets mad at the physical representation of the problem, which is Dresden, when she's supposed to be having this super Christian faith in the God that's going to protect her husband at all times.
One thing that I find relatable about her is how fallible her faith is.
And they're not those kinds of Christians, right? Like you don't see. Yeah, Michael doesn't walk around being like, "Oh, why does all this bad shit happen, God?" He's not that guy, right?
No, but she is perfectly willing to, it seems, be, for lack of a better word, judgmental about the fact that things happen to her husband just because Harry comes around. So she's more willing to put the faith aside that things are just going to work out and be okay because she's angry that her husband got her.
Well, I think it's one of those things where what was Michael's phrase? My faith protects me, my armor helps.
Right.
There's prudence involved too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I help those who help themselves. Well,
that's not in the Bible, but throw that out there. I think for Charity, it's more that she's a character with good, well-written flaws, and that's just one of the flaws, right?
Yes.
That she
comes from personal experience. She lives in a magical cult.
She does have a genuine faith, but she also sees Harry, and Harry just represents all that she resents, and she is perfectly polite when she's inclined not to be. Charity used iodine. She's cleaning the wound. She knows she should, so she does it. She's not happy about it, but you can't change how you feel. So
it's the iodine. Right. She had something else.
Mm-hmm. She definitely did, but the question you got to ask, she used iodine, was it expired? But what I was going to say though too is we're talking about who does who and having faith that everything's going to work out. I have two words for you: the warrior. Do you think Michael just sat back and shit, my daughters are kidnapped, but it's okay, everything's gonna work out, I got the faith? No, they're still people, and Michael's gonna fuck some dude up. That's what you get in Mirror Mirror. We've got Blackguard Michael because somebody done stole his daughters doing something stupid. Like,
Yeah, Leah probably stole Molly at that point.
that's true.
Sure, but I would also, and not to get too far,
Wonder if we're going to see.
I would wonder if he would have had quite that same. I mean, yes, he would have been super protective and been angry and this, that, and the other thing. But if he was still in fighting shape and had the sword, I have to imagine some of that would have been, it wouldn't have been erased, but it would have been curtailed a little bit because he would have had his own personal faith and belief in the fact that he could then do something.
Sure.
I can't believe how. To be fair, he also doesn't have the sword anymore, and he's like when in the Warrior.
Who said that?
What?
The cat. Oh no!
The empty basket.
The empty basket of fuzz.
No, I mean my point is that yes, that's what I just said. Like that's literally point for point what I just said.
Right. I mean,
but I was just repeating it, and then I was gonna.
Yes.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Go.
Such professionalism. This should definitely be edited out.
Hey, Eddie, take this out, okay? Thanks.
Eddie, the editor. Is that what you're gonna do? Really?
Alliteration.
Yeah. Seriously, man.
Yeah, Ivy.
Where do you get these guys? Yes, Ivy. So I'm just
Birth certificate or not?
Right. I'm just going to start with that, right? I had one of those random shower thoughts when I was listening to it this time. And she's like, I don't have a name. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a name? If you don't have a name, you don't have a birth certificate. Because if you had a birth certificate, you fucking know what your name is because you know everything that's written down. And that's kept me up for like 3 nights this week. So yeah.
Home birth. Easy step, easy solution.
Yeah, there's that, but in the fact that she does seem to have some amount of legitimate bank accounts. You have to have a name to have a bank account.
Like
she knows
repository of all human knowledge. She knows her password.
It's a corporation. Obviously, the archive is a corporation. That's why we have to have all the books, the laws on the books about corporations.
Still demands that. What in the fuck?
Motorcycles. I got a freeway right there. Sorry.
Nice.
Isn't everything on fire? What are you?
No, we just had rain.
Not that again. Anyway,
Eddie.
Corporations are people, so that's how we get around it. The archive is
corporations still generally insist that people have to have names and like paper.
Well, I mean, she's got
LLCs.
Right? She doesn't have a bunch of hundreds of thousands of dead people's social security numbers and names that she could make a bank account under.
She doesn't seem like the kind that would just steal someone's identity.
She knows everything. She knows everything that is written down, including how to make money legitimately and illegitimately. So she's probably launders her own money.
On top of the fact that she's basically run by the mantle 99% of the time. The mantle is at a minimum amoral. It will just do what it does to keep her alive. She's not going to care if she steals someone's identity.
Shell corporations everywhere, like, hey, Kincaid, throw another $1 million in the laundromat.
Yeah, so. I mean, Kincaid could go and fill in it could be all under his name, and she just has access to it or whatever.
I wouldn't go that far because I mean, apparently his contract is temporary. Like, oh, you're paid up through April, so it's like, what the fuck? Why would that just not be auto renewed? Come on.
Well, sure, but we also kind of find out later that he had more connection there. That seems like a little bit more of a perfunctory thing.
But because I think on paper he likes to think of himself as a mercenary and not her daddy.
Well, and at this point he's got like the best gig in the universe, right? Like, so.
Yeah, sure.
Drives her around, gets her cookies,
shoots
some
vampires.
People. Yeah.
Why not?
He's happy.
Snipes Denarians and wizards, so.
He's not working for Dracula anymore. It's got to be 20 times easier.
Well, and it seems like his contract is open a little bit, right? Because he does get the occasional side gig, so.
Yeah. Well, he's, next book he's going to be in.
He goes to Hawaii once in a while.
That too.
Yep, at least once. So, which irritates me because I realized that should have totally been in briefcases, which means that he didn't write it, which means he's going to have to do another fucking anthology, no matter how much he pisses and moans about it. So it's like you already got more stories. Like
I don't know.
Ideas.
We could tempt fate and say that it could be a lengthy flashback in Mirror Mirror or something, or in one of these upcoming books when Kincaid shows up.
Peace Talks.
Peace Talks. Everything happens in Peace Talks. A lengthy flashback.
It's because Peace Talks is the big apocalyptic trilogy that we just don't know yet.
Actually, I buy it in peace talks because Kincaid's going to have to be there, right?
Because Ivy's going to have to be there because it's peace talks.
And so we're going to have that awkward, like, hey, guess what? Karen and Dresden are a thing now, and you are like the naughty ex-boyfriend, and
that killed him.
And then he'll be like, hey, guess what, Karen? Do you remember that time you and I went to Hawaii? And Dresden's going to be like, motherfucker.
And then there's 4 it just fades out on him saying that 4 chapters of them.
A flashback to the thing on Hawaii. Yeah.
And then
Kincaid, he only gets 4 chapters.
Her ex-husband has to be there because Chicago and FBI and the veil gets lifted and all that. So
no, it should be. I mean, it'll be with Tilly. If her ex-husband being there is just
it's going to be there just to make it uncomfortable.
That would just be for plot needling.
Right.
There's no reason Rick should be a part of this.
He's going to be Tilly's partner now. So. Yeah. And Tilly's going to be 2 days from retirement, so you know how that's going to work out.
He's going to come back as a Valkyrie.
He's too old for this shit.
He's going to have a sex change and then die.
Oh crap! I'm the other kind.
Yeah,
I know hard and earned him.
You watch the other guy. Either way, the guy can't be a Valkyrie.
I just feel people shitting on the culture
of my
people right now.
I know hard and earned him harder.
That's Swedish, guys. Come on.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Very distinct dialect of
perhaps Andre should give us a sampling at his earliest convenience.
I like your pronunciations, but I'd understand if you hate everybody right now. So
I mean, I'm not Swedish, so I can't really help you with that. Sorry.
You keep saying that, but
no. The way to
Danish.
remember it,
I'm the better Nordic country.
You have an apple filling. You're a Danish.
Okay, so is there anything else people wanted to cover with Ivy?
I just want to quickly object to the notion that an apple Danish is the best. That is clearly incorrect.
It's probably bear claw.
Ivy.
Ivy's a scary, creepy little girl who likes kitties.
Right. And she gets retconned.
And knows everything that's ever been written down, ever.
What is it with you and retconned? How does she...
Because she so clearly goes through
Ivy's in this
changes.
book, and Ivy comes back in book 10. Why didn't we see her in book 15? That was sad.
Because the Denarians follow the pattern, not everything involved with them.
But both...
Also, not everything follows the fucking pattern, and not everything's a mantle.
Valmont didn't show up in Small Favor, but she shows up in Skin Game.
Ivy already
shows up in Denarian books.
Ivy already shows up in 12. She's called on the phone.
Yes, she's getting
you don't hear
off screen for 5 seconds.
Okay.
That's not showing up.
I want more Ivy, okay?
Well, when Peace Talks comes out.
You can whine after the show. I want to know how she gets retconned.
Because she basically goes from, like, the description of her past and her mother and all that gets completely changed in Small Favor. There's like, okay, yeah, she had a mother who died young. And then that's the only thing that really stays.
No. They said persistent vegetative state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they said those words in the book.
They did say those words in Death Masks.
Yes.
They did not say those words in Small Favor.
In Small Favor, it's that she committed suicide.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, yes, it doesn't preclude the ability that she's a vegetable, but
I was like, are we sure we're not splitting hairs? And we're not being pedantic because maybe she attempted suicide and that's how she wound up in a persistent vegetative state?
Yes, it's possible, but it seemed like the emphasis was put on the fact that she would rather and did rather kill herself than carry the archive to term.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So yes,
saying those two, they're not incompatible ideas, right?
They're not, but it's not, it's still a little... It could be a distinction without a difference, yes. But at the same time, it seems like an unnecessary addition if you didn't want her to just be dead. Because this way, it kind of seems like, she died because she gave birth and the mantle went out of her, and that's just a fact of what happened. Versus she actively killed herself because she didn't want to do this.
Well, I mean, and taking it even a step further, like from Ivy's perspective, is it literally the same thing? Because if she's in a persistent vegetative state, then she's probably being cared for somewhere, and she knows what her doctor's file looks like. So she knows she ain't coming back from that without some kind of, miracle intervention. So that's why I'm like, to me, it doesn't feel like a retcon. It feels like...
you know what? Maybe we can look at it as in this way. The archive has decided that this is the way to describe it, to insulate Ivy from what we then later find out is the quote-unquote true reason. And again, it doesn't have to be incompatible. She could be a vegetable now. But we find out later that it was this more active and intentional act on her mother's part that we know Ivy knows because they say directly in that book, and Ivy knows that this is what her mother chose to do.
Right.
But so maybe this is the archive kind of softening the blow because it has to, because she's a kid, because she needs insulation.
Maybe, but we otherwise is it just word of Jim, or does it come up in the books that it's like normally the archive is older before they become the archive? Like it's a little bit of both.
That was just small favor.
Who says that, right?
Gotcha.
No, it was Lucio.
Okay, Lucio. Yeah. So yeah, she like normally you're supposed to be older and have a little bit of your own personality before, and that's part of why it's so weird that she doesn't have a name, and why it's even more important that Dresden names her, which we still haven't figured that out in the text, because I think that's something that Jim brings up in his Q&As. But yeah, so I mean, there's definitely stuff going on there, and I'm sure we're going to see it. I mean, what kind of little girl has all the power of the like senior council, for example, and just rolling around in her head? So it just, yes, she's big and scary, and like sets off all of his wards in a way that he hadn't experienced up to that point. So, which I thought was a fun little,
moment,
twist on the trope. Like he's all panicking and battening down the hatches and shit, and then like a polite little knock and a little girl's at the door, and it's like, what? So. That, and it's like, and if you do violate the duel, I will kill you. It's like,
right. And then we later find out she's handling a substance that the only other person we see actively doing anything with it is Hades. I mean, we see it pop up from Peabody, but it just kind of gets set loose.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why does she have Mordite?
Because she needed to.
I imagine academically it makes sense to have it.
It does kind of seem like, okay, just academically she could have it. She's the archive, whatever. Why use it for a duel?
Because it settles it. It's willpower. Yeah.
I mean, she says it right there. It's susceptible to will, so that, I mean, what else can you use?
They put an enchantment on it that was susceptible to will. So
that's a fantastic point. Okay, hang on. And Mordite is a bit of stuff from outside, right?
Yeah. Yes. Why does she have outside stuff?
Oh. But then think about this. The Starborn have this whole thing with will, right? They're super good with their will, and Harry can use his magic to attack outsiders because he's a Starborn. He's got this will thing going on.
I don't think that has anything to do with his will.
If Mordite responds to will, I think there's a connection there between the outside and Starborn and Mordite.
I think I follow. I think I follow what you're trying to say, but like if he had a Starborn advantage,
you're
then
picking up what he's putting down.
He should have been able to crush Ortega, right?
Well, a Starborn advantage, which means like he's bumped up a couple levels to Ortega's level or something like that. Maybe. I'm just pointing out, if it's susceptible to will, that will have implications in the future too when Harry inevitably goes outside or does whatever.
Oh, you think when he violates the going beyond the outer gates, like he's going to literally go out beyond the outer gates?
And it's susceptible to will, and he's a Starborn with super will. And once he levels up, his super will will be even more super. So
I'd love to see him fight Cthulhu wearing Mordite armor. Why not? Thanks for putting that in my brain.
I think he's going to have Amaratius and say, "Let there be light," or something. I don't know.
He doesn't get to use his swords.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Like we're going to have a full on. Yeah, he had to go back in time to get the time stones so he could go bargain with Dormammu so that. Oh wait, sorry. Okay, well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, the why she has Mordite stuff doesn't really bother me. It's just it's like her function. So
it seems okay for the archive to have Mordite. It just seems a bit like massive overkill for that kind of a duel when I'm sure there's something else that could work.
Well, there's no... Okay, so two things. there's no question, right? When the Mordai touches you, you bamf out of existence. So there is no like, well, if we look at it sideways, and if I was really kind of winning, no, you're fucking dead. You died. That's the argument we're having. My second question is, what the fuck else would you use? It's a battle of wills. What are you going to do? This isn't like Vicini and the man in black in The Princess Bride, where they're like, oh, I tricked you, that battle of wills, right? How the fuck do you, what is a battle of wills when one guy doesn't walk away from it? What does that look like?
It's an elegant solution, I think, because otherwise you have to have some kind of enchanted thing that responds to will that ends up with the same result, right?
Could have
Or
been a
you have-
magic spear.
It just seems a bit weird to use something from the outside when you could probably get the same effect of something from inside.
Okay. Like it should have been antimatter instead. I mean,
Sure.
yeah.
I mean, outside. That like the emphasis on that.
We had to see it before it got used.
That is true.
By
I'm going to give that it had to
Right.
be like
I got
introduced.
I got no answer
Kick
for
of
you.
Skun. Yes.
Guess what? Write it down and ask Jim when he comes back on the show. That's a great question for him.
In
it's one we don't have an answer
Dozens
for.
of years.
it would definitely
No.
it would definitely fit. It would
He
definitely
said
fit.
after peace talks. He didn't say when.
Yes. Well, okay,
That's
yes,
true.
there's
Not
there's more
immediately
years
after.
after peace talks than there were before, I suppose, if you're going to be a pessimist about it. But
Or I've seen 14,561 futures. And in how many of them did Peace Talks come out next year? None of them. Oh,
No,
at
the answer
least,
is
at
one.
least one. Yeah.
oh, at least one.
It's ours because we're in the brightest future. We're
Best of all possible worlds. Thank you,
Yes.
Leibniz. Okay.
But did we decide we're in the one that Harry failed in Summer Night?
Oh,
No,
no.
it's
Right.
rare.
well, yes,
If
but
it happens.
I mean, really, we're just trying to figure out which is the worst of the better things, and we talked
Well,
about
the one
that
where
last
the
time.
world survives sounds good.
Well, yeah, no, global warming is bad, right? But we beat Hitler, so that's what I'm saying. Like, we're okay.
It evens out?
We had that discussion last time, right? Like, Dunkirk, man, he should have crushed them. So we got to be in the world where he didn't for some reason. So,
Yeah, but that's the same world that Harry's in.
so
Yeah,
there
but
are
Harry's
two
overrated.
then. So Harry's is the slightly better future where global warming is actually man-made instead of the summer court one here. So,
Mhm.
and really though, ours could still be the brighter future because the summer court one, and that's why it's getting so warm is because bright, and that heat's got to go somewhere, and it's just gonna. Hey, are we do we have some?
This has evolved into complete nonsense.
Right.
Prove it.
Well, I have a shard of complete nonsense right here, and I'm comparing it to the podcast, and I'm seeing right through. And
I have a
Does
dumb
it-
question.
yes.
What balance did Ulshar of us care about?
The
What
balance.
balance?
The ones that
She
the
just-
the Denarians, that's what they always do.
But
They
why did
screw-
she give
they-
a shit?
Because she's
The
an
balance.
angelic messenger.
She's
You
not an angelic mister.
No, she's
you
not.
read the comics, right? Like with
What
the
makes
Naga and how they care about preserving the balance. Like the balance isn't just a white god versus the Denarians type of thing.
I don't
The-
remember any comics with Nagas.
Well, yeah, because
I do in the forest with the
Yeah.
Ghoul Goblin.
Yeah, that's what I thought when we
Mhm.
talked about Ghoul Goblin and the giant snake.
Okay.
The Indian chick. The giant snake is the Indian chick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
They're preservers of the balance too. Like it's a cosmic thing.
There's so many different
Light
types of balances.
and
When I was thinking
darkness,
about this,
evil and
and
good. Okay, go.
okay, so obviously there's balances between like angels and demons and and whatever fairy balances and whatever, but like Ulsharvas is not either of those. So what balance does she care about?
the spiritual balance.
Inside, outside. It's probably probably blander.
I mean,
Probably just general.
she's a quote unquote oracle spirit that exists outside of time, so she sees things differently. So she
So-
probably has that kind of balance in mind too.
I imagine, just good versus evil. So
But I kind of like the Jedi thing sometimes if like you can overdo good.
no, the Jedi were actually terrible. The Jedi were true neutral. They weren't good guys. Like
Mm.
they preserve the status quo. If you want to get into that, like,
Druids will do it.
so because if you read a lot of the books, like they're the peacekeepers, right? And so when a war breaks out, they want to talk you to death, right? Like sure, they had their lightsabers and people died and whatever because that's more exciting, but they're peacekeepers. The peacekeepers aren't running around like, they didn't build great cities and do all this other crazy shit. And sure, some of that happened too, right? But war broke out. They were okay with the blockade because no one's dying, like that sort of thing. So anyway, I just took it at face value. She's got part of the prophecy because she exists on that kind of wavelength, right?
Mhm.
And that's part of why you had to call her up in the first place. Well, are we sure it's a she? I don't. Anyway,
Well,
It says
she
she.
claims to be a she.
He says
Joshy
she.
is male.
maybe because she was in a Cabbage Patch doll, and otherwise it's weird. But
I think Bob also said she.
Yes.
okay. So anyway, yeah, like I just took it as a basic good versus evil thing.
It doesn't seem like in the way that oracles are kind of described as having to preserve the balance, it almost seems robotic. She seems more like she made a specific choice. She wanted things to go in a certain way.
She's slightly
Because-
benevolent.
Yeah, she didn't want to work with him because she thought he was a sorcerer. So there's that. And then she fulfilled the bargain. She made him think of why do you do what you do, which is so important to all of his decision makings, especially in this book. And then she told him even more than that of the rest of the prophecy. She was clearly pushing something.
Maybe she's helping preserve the balance in a way that we don't know yet, or
Oh, sure.
maybe
I
not.
think balance tends towards not just a good versus evil in this sense, but a fullness versus absence. It's a lie, and there's the whole prophecy being restored. I don't know how
Right.
you can say. I don't think that in that context, that character would lie if everybody knew all the truth. I don't think that's that kind of balance. I think it's a balance of specifically restoring something absent.
Well, and that's a good point. Like we'd have to go into the metaphysical happenings of what went on, right? So the White Gods team sends a messenger, whatever that looks like. I mean, presumably literally an angel. Nicodemus is able to waylay it somehow. Like, how does that all fit into the balance, right? The White God already cheated by sending a messenger by one perspective. Nicodemus was able to balance it out by stopping it, but maybe Ulshur of Us was another conduit, kind of like what you were saying, where they were able to get the prophecy to where it needed to go by Ulshur of Us. So
if this were some world like Sanctuary in the Diablo universe or something, the balance is already there because you got the good guys, you got the bad guys, and they'll just kind of duke it out, and then that's it.
Right.
Rather than any kind of larger metaphysical concern, like you say. So,
well, I mean, I don't know, and I mean, we could call it a cheat that the White God is able to send an angel, even though we know angels pop up.
Sure.
And I don't think Nicodemus waylaid an archangel, for example. But if, for the sake of argument, the Denarians already knew this prophecy and what it was, then on balance, the knights would or should have to know it too in order to be there to combat them or do whatever they're going to do. And if Nicodemus doesn't want them involved, so he's going to knock that aside and try and keep them out of it.
it could be something as simple as the way the prophecy was received. They managed to know about, somebody would know about it in advance and managed to distract the attention of the person receiving the message at some opportune time.
That's why I'm glad this is the
That's
only
all-
book
that
with a
doesn't-
prophecy of any kind in it.
And actually,
Like, it just shows up.
Yeah, and it's all good points because Nicodemus had to know about it in advance so that they could know to waylay the angel, and the angel was probably sent because however Nicodemus came about it in the first place. So that really all just kind of like,
And Nicodemus purposely wanted them only to have half of the prophecy in order to get the knights to think that Harry shouldn't be involved, but then he gets Harry involved, and then what?
well, I think what happened is, I mean, he would have been fine with them not knowing it, but then he saw an opportunity that it's like, if I give them only half of it, then that'll fuck up plans more, like I said earlier, like maybe he just wanted Michael on tilt. Maybe he just wanted,
But I don't
whatever.
think it. I mean, it seemed like Shiro understood the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because like Shiro, he did the.
Are you saying that a
fuck?
lot of what the knights do makes sense? Like the fact that they can just fucking know shit? Like, hey, where are we supposed to go? That way. Why? Because I fucking go that way. I don't know.
Because I saw the arrow over his head, clearly.
Right? Because I smelled something good. Because whatever.
Bad. He goes after
Whatever,
bad.
yeah, whatever it is exactly. Each knight has some particular way. That's not too big of a world.
And considering this led to Shiro's retirement,
Right.
he did seem to know that he was going to go into that position, and he seemed perfectly fine with it because he's Zen that way.
Well, and he wrote a letter, so we kind of know.
Yeah. No, he knew, and he was fine with it.
Right.
It's just the prophecy and everything Nicodemus was trying to do seemed both conflicting with itself and useless because Shiro already knew it all.
Yeah.
Well,
you
or
have to consider the Denarians are a little bit overstated when it comes to planning things. They have been introduced as these super baddies that Bob wants. You can't even have their sigil on a napkin, and yet they lose every time. So.
And I mean, yeah, it just kind of goes into, it's like if dude had been asleep for 90% of the last 2,000 years, he should still be kicking Dresden's ass. Like,
right. I mean, the fact that he got, sword or no sword, that he was stalemated even briefly by like Murphy in Skin. There are moments,
for fuck's sake.
There are plenty of moments where these guys, everything about them is just undercut by the actions on screen.
Well, and I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there for completeness.
Let's let the NASCAR race go by first.
Right. So for completeness, the swords are equalizers is the best way we've discussed it. Because again, otherwise, like, how would Michael have taken down a big D dragon if it wasn't the will of the White God to do so? And so, like, at the very least,
Molly, I'm sure there's fate in that.
Yeah, like at the very least, they equalize in some way, but that shouldn't extend to Harry, in my opinion.
That shouldn't extend to a guy that's got supposedly, like, at a minimum, 1,500 years of swordplay experience versus a 40-year-old 5-foot nothing cop?
Yeah. She doesn't know how to sword fight because it's convenient or whatever,
Well, no, she knows how to sword fight because it's convenient. But I'm saying, if you're going to give that sort of... Like, if you're going to make her this sharpshooting, Aikido master, katana-wielding badass, all right, fine. But she's still fighting someone who's got 10 times her experience at a minimum of swordplay.
Two things. One, despite your objections, his record is still unbroken. Every night he's gone up against, he wins. Two, I think that's even brought up in this book, or it's one of the other ones, but it's much harder to fight somebody who doesn't know the rules when you know all the rules, right? So, we could play that whole thing like, she doesn't know how to fight on Nicodemus's level, and that distracts him for a few minutes, but ultimately he does win and kick her ass, and everything's good from his perspective anyway. But like, they talk about it, right? What's the life expectancy of a knight? But my problem with it is all that shit's off screen, right? Like, I would like to see some way for them to convey while he's on screen, like, how scary badass he is. Like, the breakfast scene goes a long ways towards it. It seems like he had Dresden's number for a number of things. He's got him underwater. He's got him locked up. He's got the manacles later, stuff like that. Yeah,
later, which that occurred to me this time. It's like, I guess the manacles hadn't been invented by Jim yet.
Right. So, and I mean, get reinvented with fairy steel because that's convenient and, whatever. So, yeah, so all of that happens, but it's like, when he's on screen, he just doesn't sell me as the badass, he sacked Alexandria, and he's killed every knight he's ever gone up against. Because I told you, you're not showing me. Show me he's a badass.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, it would be one thing if he would, and he is always thwarted by the main character, but he gets thwarted by main character proxies later on.
I get you. Yeah,
so, I couldn't make a complaint if it's always he's going up against that. Well, what do you expect? Harry's the main character. He's got the plot armor. This, that,
right.
Other thing.
Well, since Harry and Murphy are going to get married, then she's got plot armor by proxy too. So.
Until she dies.
And so, what's Butter's excuse? Oh, he got a lightsaber.
Yeah.
Ex machina.
hell, for all I care, the next time Butters is on screen, he can get his ass kicked, because it'd be funny too to see him draw the haft of the sword and it not appear, and it's like, this has never happened before, and just get his ass kicked, like, because that's the thing. It's like, people rag on Butters and everything, but it's like, he's not going to be able to do the same things that Michael and the other knights did.
Mid-40s, 5'3".
Well, no, he's going to be able to do it now.
Doesn't have a sword.
No, because he's got a lightsaber, and it's therefore, quote unquote, more powerful against the supernatural side. It's not going to be as effective against your average goon.
Right.
But so Butters is totally going to be able to stay around, because just being near this lightsaber is going to hurt the people.
Just switch in places, though. Like the airport scene with Michael. Michael stabbed through the door to kill a goon. Butters is going to be able to do that with his saber.
I saw them do that in the prequels.
Yeah, with an actual lightsaber, because it's a physical thing.
Right.
This is not. This is if you waved your hand through it.
It's Nicodemus' physical normal sword and breaks it.
Of course,
you can probably go through physical objects.
If Butters does it, though, he will have definitely jumped the shark. Like, I won't even be able to defend that anymore. Because, like, so far, like, loads of people have been like, fan service, and he's just writing it because he wants to and whatever with the lightsaber thing. But I'm like, again, I'm going to let him have this one. Let's see what happens and, blah, blah, blah. But if he does start, like, cutting dudes through doors and shit, I'm like, no. Sorry.
He's going to dodge it by having Butters off screen for most of the books.
Why would you not just pop up? What do you think is wrong with that? If he did that, because it's already shown he would theoretically be able to do that.
Because it's the aura of goodness. It's not a tangible physical thing. Like,
how does it block a normal sword in Nicodemus' hands? Because Nicodemus is holding it.
Right, possibly. or because that sword is evil itself. Like.
That sword is stained with the blood of the innocent, therefore it can cut through it.
Sure. 2,000 years worth of bad shit happened. I don't know.
I mean, it's a katana, right? I don't think it's actually something he's had for 2,000 years.
He's the Highlander. He invented the katana. So.
I mean, I just think you can go through physical objects and you're going to be disappointed, because I think it's like it can.
No, it absolutely almost certainly can, because it did.
Right. Yeah, that would be... Well, but... It would contradict his own Q&A, right? Because he's talked about how it's not an actual sword. He can't employ it in the same ways. So it's stronger and weaker at the same time. It can't be broken because it's already broken. And I don't know. I hope not.
I don't know either.
All right. So are we doing part 2 or are we done?
Oh God, no.
I don't know. There's so much to talk about.
Next time, turkeys.
Yes.
Is there anything you want to bring up quickly, specifically? You think, as you said, since you say there's so much, like, did you think we missed out?
Well, I mean,
he's being facetious.
No, I mean, there actually is. I was thinking of a lot earlier that we didn't get to, but the ritual, the plague, the two purposes of the denarians, of the other. I mean, the way these rereads are going, we're talking about every book as we talk about every book, and just kind of focusing on one. So it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is a retrospective, so we kind of we jump around, think like this does reference that.
Read one book and we talk about changes instead.
Yeah, peace talks. Everything happens.
And mirror, mirror.
Also, I was like mirror, mirror. We're using it more as like a speculation engine than a retrospective. So, guess what? Black Council didn't actually show up and do anything in this one. Like, that's my main takeaway.
Huh.
Like, unless you want to count the tattoo that you're angry about, because I'm telling you,
no, it was like, I would say unless it's actually Ortega is Black Council.
Exactly.
But the Black Council wants the war, so Ortega.
But even in your notes, you were wondering, like, why does Ortega want to keep Harry as a vampire so bad? Like, well, because he's a Starborn. You said that in your notes.
Yeah, that's fair. But so, like, that might be that part of it.
But wizard, Starborn or not?
That doesn't mean Black Council. So.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, it's the same. It's the same. Going back to Grave Peril, the idea that if the decision is that he lets them take Susan and the war still kicks off anyway, they're eliminating this piece on the board that says here's the reason why the war is continuing, because he wants the break in order for it to keep going. So Harry being a Starborn or not, it still achieves what he wants. He gets the excuse out of the way, but then they can sucker punch them again later because that's what he wants them to do.
And then they'd have a better sucker punch with Dresden, but
presumably.
Yeah.
But even if he was, generic wizard A, it achieves what Ortega is looking for.
All right, Ben, plug all the shit.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. This has been a production of the Broken Jars Podcasting Network, the Dresden Files podcast, the very professional Dresden Files podcast. We have other podcasts in the Broken Jars Podcasting Network, which we encourage you to listen to. High Fantasy is still hiatus.
Mm-hmm. Although Colin did finish his writing a novel in a month thing several days early, so congratulations to him.
Congratulations. We also have Sim Talk, starring Jacob, not just Jacob, but the other Jacob. Sim Talk is a very popular podcast about Sim Talk.
Very professional, that one.
Very professional. And what else we got? Office. The Office. What's it called?
Great Scott.
Great Scott. That's right. Watch the Great Scott podcast. It's about...
you can pull up our website and just read it, right?
Yeah, we've got them all listed
there. Professional podcast would do, and we don't.
Yeah. Brokenjars.xyz, because Ben sucks at this job apparently. So.
Hey, what? You just foisted it on me after I stole it a couple times.
You volunteered the last 4 shows, so.
Yep, because he likes the sound of his own voice.
I do like the sound of my own voice.
It's very professional sounding when he talks.
Broken Jars Podcasting Network. Okay. Anyway, was there anything else?
No.
Oh,
we
next
just gotta
week,
wait for the director to hit the thing.